Why, hello everyone, and welcome to Windows vs. macOS vs. Linux. Trevor, this is gonna be the final video.
This is the conclusion.
And before we give any final numbers, we actually have a couple more categories to go through. These categories are somewhat miscellaneous, as well as some opinion-driven categories, because that is pretty valid in this debate as well.
Yeah.
User preference, how every user is going to react to a different operating system. There's a lot of thought to be put into this, and I think it's pretty valid. So I do think we need to go through it.
Absolutely, and we're really trying to go after the average consumer here. Like I said in the past, we're not always the average consumer.
No.
I think one thing we've learned over the series is that we could probably survive on any of these operating systems if we had to. We may all have our personal preference, but I think all three operating systems are good for what they are. However, we got to also take ourselves out of that and put ourselves in the average consumer's foot, which may be a little different at times.
Of course. And, we're going to try to go through this, looking at the average consumer. However, at some points, we might kind of dip into our, category of how we use computers and whatnot, and however that still is somewhat relevant.
Yep.
So anywho, here we are with our final categories. So first off, we're gonna be talking about available hardware. What does that mean? We already talked about hardware. What computers, tablets, and whatever is available for each operating system. So let's look at Windows, Go to Best Buy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, every computer manufacturer makes a computer for Windows. That's the truth.
Well, Apple doesn't make a computer for Windows.
Some would argue they don't make computers.
Very true. However, so available hardware, on Windows, yeah, you can go to like Best Buy, Walmart, online, Amazon, and buy basically any laptop, desktop, even tablets.
Yeah.
So Windows is going to get 1 point there. On the other hand, macOS, not as much available hardware. However, anything that Apple makes, Macs and Macs, iMacs, MacBooks, whatever, there is good hardware, arguably good hardware available for macOS, so you're fine in that regards.
Some would say Apple doesn't make computers.
Some would say that, but in this score sheet, they do.
Someone would say that the new iPad Pro outspecs the machine we use to benchmark everything in.
That's possible too. Linux, on the other hand, now this is where we're going to be fighting about, because you go to Best Buy, Walmart, even if you look on Amazon, it's going to be really hard to find a Linux machine. Now, yes, System 76 makes a laptop that you can buy.
Looks decent.
And maybe they have some desktops. And that's, yes, I get that, they do. And Dell sells an Ubuntu laptop, but they really don't. You can salvage through Dell's website and find a Dell laptop that has Ubuntu pre-installed. But look at the specs. It is old. It is not any current gen, hardware. And it takes a while to find just that Dell laptop that comes with Ubuntu.
Yeah.
So there's a really valid argument that in all reality, there is not many viable hardware options for Linux, whether that's a laptop, a desktop, and even tablets. There really isn't any like tablets or anything. And we're taking, and just in case people want to fight me on this, Chrome OS. Yeah, and I guess Android even too, because isn't Android built?
That's a stretch for me personally.
Okay.
Look, just to give a little backstory, this was one of the big points that some people made in a couple of our last videos.
Yeah.
And here's the deal at the end of the day. When it comes to hardware, if you're looking to go get a Linux laptop, you want to go get your Ubuntu laptop, it's difficult. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lie to say otherwise. You can say Chrome OS. If anything, I'll give people that one. However, it's not really Linux either. It is Linux.
On the back end,
you're not easily installing Linux applications. I know there's a little
there is some trickery you can do.
But it's not like Ubuntu. Google's business model is not let's build a Linux operating system. It's just use Google Chrome.
Yeah,
so it's a different model. And then people are very quick to say, oh, look, these are examples of computers that, are Ubuntu computers for sale. But again, you look at those links, you do some actual research, you realize, like Eric said, it's really hard to find. When you find their old specs.
Yeah, and I think System 76, they have some decent hardware, but it's not like you can go to Best Buy and buy that. The average consumer isn't going to find where you can find a System 76 laptop or anything. So I'm sorry, Linux. It is going to get a 0 here.
It's a shame. I wish there was more Linux computers. Yeah. Hopefully that happens.
Now, price of the OS. Let's actually start with Linux here. Really across the board, Linux is free. You can download it, you know, on
almost every distro is free that I'm aware of.
and that's awesome. So, and you just go on their website, download like the .iso or whatever, easy peasy. Linux is gonna get a 1 here. macOS is a little interesting though.
See, if you're asking my opinion here, I would say macOS could be the most premium operating system price out of them all. I'll explain. Because you got to buy a Mac.
You do.
You have to. Like, there's no legal way. You used to be able to go into an Apple store and get a DVD.
Can't do that anymore.
You can't legally, legitimately get macOS without having a Mac. So your base price of what, $1,000 essentially to get an operating system?
Pretty much. I mean, someone will argue like a Mac Mini, but still.
$800. Fine, you got me. $800.
Just trying to save me $200. No, but Trevor makes a valid point here, and because of that premium that you have to spend and the fact you have to be locked in with Apple's hardware, sorry macOS, it's getting a 0 here. Windows.
It's expensive.
It is.
I mean, you're talking about $100. Did they just raise prices too, I believe, to some extent?
Something like that. Windows pricing's
Windows 10 Pro is still like $200. Like, that's ridiculous.
That's insane.
It's just, yeah.
That is insane. So Windows is going to get a 0 here. Software installation process. So this is interesting because you can buy a Windows copy and on like a flash drive, or I don't know if they make Windows 10 DVDs anymore. They do.
Yeah, I have.
And you know, you put it in. You can easily go through the process and install it. That's awesome. So Windows is going to get a point there. macOS. See, macOS is already installed on the computer.
Yeah.
So that is good.
Yeah.
And we don't want to double penalize Mac because of, you know, we already, you know, ranted that, you know, you're paying a premium. So this isn't about price here. This is about ease of use. And because your hardware is pre-built with the OS and the way that Apple has their recovery even on their built into their laptops,
that's really
it helps.
good. The recovery method is good.
It does. So I think we're gonna give Apple a point here.
It's pretty simple.
Now, Linux. Some might argue this. Let's see how this goes. So the process of installing Ubuntu or any other distro, they're all the same, basically. It's a nice interface, click a couple buttons, flawless, just like any operating system. However, figuring out, you know, where to download an ISO and then putting it on a flash drive, not the end of the world by any means. In today's world, it's actually pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
But that's also saying that the end consumer is going to spend their time and do that. I don't think they're going to.
It's hard to say. Like, for someone like us, we'll manage that. You know, it's not the big deal. But putting yourselves in the average consumer's shoes, it's hard. However, I don't know if they still do this. Ubuntu used to sell DVDs.
They used to,
do that
and
anymore.
I believe there are some flash drives you can get off for different distros, so that's good.
That makes it a little different too, because it's going to be dependent on your distro. I still think there should be an easier method to make that USB installer instead of having to use like a third-party program like Rufus or something like that. Like Windows has a great tool. You download on Windows, you plug the flash drive in, you click, yep, flash drive, next. It starts making that flash drive. I feel like Ubuntu could come out with something like that. And again, we're talking about making that installation. It's probably not going to be on Ubuntu, or it's probably going to be on the operating system the user has, like Windows or Mac OS. I feel like that process isn't perfect yet.
No.
Some Linux distros do it though. Even like a good example of like some Unix systems like Unraid, which we've used. They have a great tool. It's both on Mac and PC, I think, and Linux, where it's a little tool. You download it, it downloads their OS and installs on a flash drive. Perfect. We need to see more stuff like that in the Linux world, but this one is a tough one.
This was most certainly a tough one. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to kind of step away from, you know, the issues with Linux overall in regards to how popular it is. Because if it was popular, trying not to get into any arguments here, but if it was as popular as Windows and Mac,
this wouldn't be a problem.
This wouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, and it's going to get a 1.
I'm surprised by you doing that, but I do agree.
Thank you very much.
I thought I was going to have to yell at you.
All right, so now we're going to be diving into more opinion-based things, and I guess I'm going to start off first, and that is the ease of use of all of these operating systems. So first off, I personally find macOS, and again, this is now looking at my opinion here. Trevor's going to have his time to talk. macOS, I'm going to give a point to. I find that their operating system is very easy to use. I have no issues with it. On the other hand, Windows. Is it easy to use? Yes, but there are times where I find things to be a little bit more cumbersome and more difficult than they should be. You know, it's always not the greatest interface, so I'm gonna unfortunately give it a 0. Linux, on the other hand, ease of use. Sorry, Linux. Is it easy to use with the pre-installed apps and whatnot? Yeah, But when it comes time to, just do day-to-day tasks, you'll run into some occasional issues, and I can overcome all these issues, whether it's, I plug in a flash drive and exFAT isn't supported right away, and I have to, install exFAT or whatever. It's just not perfect. And because of that, I'm gonna have to give it a 0.
Wow, ease of use. I'm gonna agree with Eric here that Mac definitely gets a point. I do have my primary operating system as using Mac OS. I think it's probably the easiest operating system for an average person to use. With that being said, Windows can get cumbersome at times, especially with Windows. You know what? Windows 7 was very simple to use. Windows 8, Windows 10, it's not as difficult, but adding all the new UI stuff, adding the ability for touchscreen, a lot of times you're trying to look for like control panel or settings, and you got to go through like different kind of the new style to the old style. It gets a little cumbersome. Unfortunately, I got to give it a 0. Linux though, here's the deal. I think Ubuntu, for example, I think it's a very easy version of Linux. I think the average consumer can figure it out. Maybe I'll do this at some point, but I want to sit down with like my dad or something who's, tech illiterate, but just give him a Linux to play around with and see how he does with it. But I think he figured it out. I do agree with Eric, there are some cumbersome things. However, I don't know if that goes into ease of use per se. 90% of average consumers just need to figure out where the web browser is and they're gonna be fine. So for ease of use, I'm gonna give Linux a point.
Yeah.
I think it deserves it. Some could argue, but going based on Ubuntu, I think we're pretty solid there.
Anywho, moving on. OS reliability. Well, if we're gonna start off with Windows, I'm giving it a 0. And that's because of recent Windows 10 updates deleting files. Are you kidding me? And someone will argue, well, that'll be fixed. Yeah, I'm sure about that. However, the notorious Windows updates when I'm trying to do something important are just so annoying.
That happened several times during filming this series, by the way. We're like restarting out of Windows updates. It's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Sorry Windows there. Mac OS reliability. I've been using Mac OS on and off for several years now. I can't complain about it. It's gonna get a 1. Reliability on Linux. Okay, I'm sorry Linux. 0.
Whoa.
The amount of times I've used hardware that, has all of a sudden been freezing up on me, the distros, not responding at times. When I've wanted it to work, sometimes it just falls short. And that's not to say it can't work. Just for the end consumer, some of the quirks and whatnot make it more difficult than not, Trevor, for the OS reliability.
I'll make this really simple.
Ooh. Wow.
I'll explain.
I know why Windows.
Windows, same things he said. I'm not going to even go into that. Mac OS. Really simple here. It is one of the more stable operating systems I've ever used. I'll agree with that. However, in the making of this series, I had to put Windows and Linux as well as Mac OS on my MacBook.
You did.
Apple has a serious bug right now within disk utility when formatting a container drive with the whole APFS or whatever.
This is why I made you do it on your Mac.
Yeah. I had to reformat my Mac OS partition like 4 or 5 times because I just lost the data. Lost everything. I got this computer, I loaded all my stuff, I lost files.
That's not good.
It's a bug within Mac OS. People have complained about it when looking online. Apple's known about it for over a year. They have not fixed it. To me, anything that has to do with me losing data or just all of a sudden something not working with no solution, like Windows. If you mess up the boot cycle of Windows, there's a good chance you can repair that with some type of recovery tool. Unfortunately, with Mac OS, if it doesn't boot, you are done. There's no help. And maybe I could have taken this hard drive out, put another, oh, that's right, proprietary Apple drive. I can't really do anything like that. So I think it's very reliable until you're messing around and tinkering a little more. I wasn't doing anything that's not supported, but it just
Boot Camp supported. You should be able to. You can install Windows.
It's, but whatever.
No good.
I'm afraid now ever taking Ubuntu or Windows off this computer now. But as far as giving Linux a 1, reliability, how many servers and data centers are running off a Linux operating system? Reliability.
Valid point.
I've had Linux servers that have been non-stop going for years that are still on, that I have not restarted, and they work fine. So I got to give 1 there for sure.
All right, fantastic. Now this is going to be a little controversial, but our next category is the cool factor. What do we think is cool? And yeah, People are going to have their own opinions here and whatnot. I know.
Well, just remember, the average consumer, they do buy things impulsively based on what's cooler now.
100%.
Hey, your neighbor gets a new car and it's parked down the driveway. I'm going to one-up him and get a cooler car.
Yeah, I mean, also, let's look at like a Razer, the Razer with the Razer Blade, that laptop. You know, when that came out, everyone was like, oh,
that's a cool laptop.
Cool laptop, thin gaming, you know. So this is pretty kind of valid. That makes sense. Cool factor for me. Well, this is just talking about operating systems. This is not talking about hardware.
No.
There's, you know, you can have whatever operating system on a Razer Blade and it could still be considered cool.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the operating system here. Everyone has Windows. Everyone has Windows.
Boring.
It's getting 0. Mac OS. Now, if you asked me this a couple years ago, yeah, Mac OS was the cool thing to have if you
Mac
had
OS
Windows.
is rad, everyone.
Yeah, no kidding. But nowadays, I'm surrounded by Macs. It is no longer like, oh, I have a Mac, it's cool. It's just a tool that gets me to get my work done. That's all it is. And I enjoy using Mac OS for my creative work. But it's not cool per se, it just does its job very well for me. It's not that cool.
Wow.
Give it a 0.
Surprised you said that.
Linux. The cool factor is interesting here because I could think it's cool to have Linux, but someone else may not. However, it is something to be said that all Linux distros look different with different interfaces and whatnot. And keyword is different. You know, different isn't per se bad. So when you look at, you know, this computer right now, this Dell computer, it's running Ubuntu right now. It looks cooler than Windows, in my opinion, because not many people see it right now. You know, everyone sees Windows. Not many people see like Ubuntu. So I'm gonna give Linux a 1 here.
Wow. Whatever. I'm surprised by that, but Windows is boring as hell. So look, you can get, this is the problem with Windows at the end of the day. You can get a $100 computer, brand new at Best Buy, around $100. Computers are coming way down price. And you can get a $15,000 computer with Windows on it.
Looks the same.
It looks the same. So Eric's right. Mac, I do agree with Eric on this. Mac OS used to be cooler. It's almost like I was one of the first people with an iPhone, the original iPhone, and it was like, oh my god, it's so cool.
Thing to have.
Now if you have an iPhone, it's like everyone has an iPhone.
You're just like everyone else.
I'm really haunted with this one.
Just remember dark mode.
Dark mode.
It's getting a 1.
I have to give it a 1. I still think it's cool. Mojave is beautiful.
It is.
I think it is cool. I honestly, maybe I'm just a sellout, but Mojave came out and it made, like, I don't know any difference between it really, except for dark mode looks cool.
It does.
So if anything, if we were doing this on High Sierra, maybe I would have given it a 0. Dark mode does actually win it over for me. Linux I think is really cool. I think, and look, even when I was running Linux for like a month or 2, people would come into the studio that have no clue about computers or any of this stuff. They're like, oh, that's cool. What is that? It's like, it is a conversation starter. Now, I don't know if you're going to find like, you're going to be at Starbucks and a girl's going to come up to you and be like, oh, what OS are you running? That looks cool.
Not.
I don't know if you're going to get a girl like that, but
don't try it.
Please do. Record it, send it to us. But I don't know how cool it is in the grand scheme of things, but I do think it's cool. There is a Hannah Montana Linux distro.
Really?
Yep, that's cool.
Really? That's insane. Not going to download it.
No, it's bad.
All right. So now, Eric and Trevor's final thoughts. You know, I've been using these operating systems for several years now. And I'll be honest, Linux I haven't used nearly as much as these other operating systems, Mac OS and Windows. I started off on Windows. I then got a Mac. And somewhere in between, I installed Linux a couple times, Fedora, Ubuntu, and then more recently been diving into Ubuntu 100%. And it's been a very interesting experience.
I mean, I'm very much similar to Eric. Though I did have a Mac earlier than he did.
Okay.
I was a Windows person all growing up. I saved up my own money to get a MacBook, original white one. Before Unibody even. And I got myself a MacBook when I was probably like 12, 13 years old, I want to say. I used the hell out of that computer and I really enjoyed, you know, Mac OS.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth several times. And I never used Linux as much as I have recently, unless you're talking about the server world. I've been doing that for the last several years for my own jobs.
Yeah.
I got to agree. It has been really interesting. I think overall, Linux has surprised me about how far it's come. It's also surprised me at how declined Windows has really become in recent years.
It's crazy.
I really, even though it's probably technically the most popular it's ever been, It just seems like it's disappointment after disappointment, and I used to love Windows. I mean, I got started my career on Windows for all intents and purposes. Without Windows, I may not have never gotten into IT.
It's crazy.
May never have worked for Microsoft. You know, like some very important things in my life may never have happened. That's really what I think at the end of the day.
So what is our final thoughts here? Well, Windows gets a 1, Mac OS gets a 1, and Linux gets a 1. And these are points that are being given by, you Windows fan, you just gave, Windows a point. You Mac fan, you just gave Mac a point. And you Linux fan, you just gave Linux a point. At the end of the day, everyone's opinion is different. Everyone's use and definition of a consumer is going to be different. So we're giving every operating system the benefit of the doubt here. So in this miscellaneous, category that we built, the total of Windows is a 3. Mac OS, 7, and Linux, a 7.
Wow.
Mac OS and Linux tied. However, this will now bring us to the grand total. Who won? Well, if you weren't keeping track, we got a fancy sheet
now,
for you.
I should say we have not seen this sheet since the beginning of this series.
We have not. I have no idea.
I mean, I'll be honest, just based on the wrap up here, it doesn't look good for Windows, but I have no clue how this is all going to
This is going to be interesting. All right, Trevor, please.
Come on, drum roll.
And
damn.
That is, whoa. Okay, so let's look at this. Windows with a score of 76 out of 100. Mac OS with a score of 74 out of 100, and Linux a score 80 out of. How did Linux win?
Huh.
That is, I am mind blown there. Mind blown. But before we even break down any of these, I will say what's interesting to note though, I mean, Linux scored an 80%. That's a passing grade in school. I mean, depending on your school, I guess 76, 74 is a passing grade as well.
Yeah, what school did you go to?
I think it's like a C.
That's a C.
It's a C. Linux is 80, I think that might.
That's a B.
Might be a B minus. B minus. That proves to you though, that no operating system is perfect. Everyone's mileage may vary. Every operating system has its flaws. Nothing is perfect. Unfortunately.
I mean, I should say too, in all reality, that a 10-point spread should be given for the margin of error even on any of these tests. So in all reality, this also shows that all these operating systems are really close. At least in our criteria, what we've looked for. I'm not going to sit here and say the last 10 videos have been the most comprehensive in all regards. A lot of it is opinion-based, but this really just does show that all these operating systems are fairly around each other. Yeah. I don't think there's one that sticks out better than another, hugely. But God, it also shows that Linux has gotten a lot better.
It has. I highly doubt that even a year ago, Linux were able to be scored
let alone
this
6 months
high.
ago, may have been a different story.
I know, that is absolutely insane.
I'm very shocked and it's funny because I did mention a comment way back that was like when we first started talking about the series, they were like, I'm interested to see who's going to win, and he essentially said Windows. And I was like, well, you don't know that. It could be Linux. And he was like, well, now I'm interested. And I was joking. I really didn't think Linux was going to win. Actually, I had no thought Linux was going to win. I thought I was going to lose this series in all reality.
No, I mean, just to also state for the record, guys, this series, these testings that we did, they happened live. We did test after test, rated the scores as they came in. This wasn't predetermined.
No.
This was natural the way we did this. And guys, if there is any other, really intensive testing you want us to do, feel free to let us know. Maybe we'll do a follow-up video, answer your guys' questions, reply to comments and whatnot.
Linux just
dominated
a lot of
dominated. That's crazy. Well, guys, please leave your feedback, ask questions, take this for what it is. There's no perfect operating system. But, I mean, this proves all of them, they're all relatively similar. It just depends on what do you need, what do you value in a computer. That's what matters, guys. So again, we'll look forward to reading your comments, answering questions, and hopefully making a follow-up video addressing that, maybe diving into some more specific things. We'll see. Anyway, guys, we'll catch you in another video.
See you guys next time.
Bye.